Yo! Here we are. Hey, everybody. Alright, get on out of here, you actual unicorn. This here is episode 6. In this episode, we enter the mind of Gunnar Clovis, a game developer here in Vegas, primarily in the casino gaming industry. Gunnar and I met through the International Game Developers Association chapter here in Vegas, which he founded. In my conversation with Gunnar, we talk about evolutionary psychology, the T-model approach to game development skills, finishing small projects, and just good food for thought for any creative out there. Really good conversation, great guy. All right, here we go. And the music goes. So my guest today is Mr. Gunnar Clovis, which it took me a long time to figure out if it was ER or AR, because I put you in my phone as ER, and then I thought that was how you spelled it since I met you.
No, that's all good. My grandma spells my name wrong.
Oh, okay.
I'm very used to that. And it doesn't bother me at all. It only bothers me when I send like an email to you or like a Discord DM, and then they still misspell my name when it's like 2 inches from the text you just read. Like,
yeah,
that's the only time I care.
Yeah. I'll just blame autocorrect. But yeah. So you are a game developer. Mm-hmm. You're here. You're in Las Vegas. You're a local. Are you from here or no?
Yeah. So I could run through my kind of bio. So I was born in Puyallup, Washington. That's just south of Tacoma, south of Seattle, and grew up kind of bouncing around there. I say I'm from Seattle/LA, those kind of greater areas, bouncing between. And I've just always been a very adaptable person. And ever since I was a kid, I was a smart kid. Like, I peaked when I was 12, and I've only gotten dumber since then. So when I was like literally 5, not exaggerating, I said, I want to do something that's creative because I have so many interests. And so I didn't know what the word entrepreneur was yet or understand the concept. I was like, no, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be something that, at least ideally, my job performance was directly related to how much money I made.
Yeah.
And I've just always had such a diverse array of interests. So I originally wanted to be a film director. Worked in film a little bit because I was in LA. And so James Cameron was my hero at the time because he just makes things as an excuse to spend money, ultimately. Like, we think of Titanic, greatest, most profitable film of all time for a long time, as this grand love story. That's the association. But he didn't care about that. He just was obsessed with the ruins of the Titanic, and he needed, I need $300 million to rent a bunch of deep-sea diving equipment, and then he personally got in these subs and looked at the ruins because he just wanted to.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. He actually goes and does that stuff.
Same thing. Yeah, all of his projects, he just really does it as an excuse because he's interested in a certain thing, whether it's a technology or history or science, whatever that is. I've always been like that. But then when my parents split as a kid, I was more settled in Seattle. So like 70% of my time in Seattle, 30% in LA. And Seattle, not everyone knows, is the game development capital of the world. So pivoted from film to video games at a young age, mainly because of Portal and Valve.
Okay.
I was a Portal 2 modder for a long time. I know a lot about that community where I learned a lot of my early game design skills.
For our listeners, a modder is someone who takes the game will release they release the game engine, or they release like an open source thing that you can go and like
but not always. A modder is just someone who makes new content for a pre-existing game.
Okay.
In whatever form. So sometimes they'll be with a level editor, which was my case roughly, and they have like their source 2 hammer, not source 2, but their source hammer editor exposed. But a lot of times modders will just like decompile the game files when there's no help at all, like edit scripts individually and like do crazy stuff.
That's the most punk rock thing ever.
It's like, super punk rock. Yeah.
That's how a lot of people, like, especially before there were things like game development schools, like they would go, and that's what I'm hearing about and reading about is like people who go and learn programming from that.
Which is what I did. Yeah, I went to a game development school. Yeah. I went to kind of the best one in the world, DIT, DigiPen Institute of Technology in Redmond, Washington. I went there because the team that made Portal came from there. They made a game called Nervacular Drop in their senior year of college at DigiPen. And then Valve just bought that entire team, say, oh, you're all part of Valve now, recreate that game in our source engine, and that's what Portal is.
Wow.
It's an amazing story. And they sell that for marketing reasons pretty heavily. Same thing, again, actually happened with Portal 2. The gels, the Propulsion Gel, Repulsion Gel, that came from a game called Tag the Power of Paint, which was another DigiPen student game that Valve bought and co-opted. Like, it happens a lot. And that's actually one of the main reasons that Seattle is the game dev capital of the world, because that school has been operating since the 80s. The chairman was Claude Comer, who is the chairman of Nintendo Software Technologies, NST, in the West. He studied in Japan for a long time. He's this Lebanese foodie war hero. I love Claude Comer.
That's a good business card.
And, you know, he actually, so they originally made that school because in the 80s, there weren't enough qualified engineers to work for Nintendo. Because it turns out programming for games is actually really hard. It's a lot easier now because we have game engines to help that will do 90% of the work. But even still, the most cutting edge of game development, it's actually the most difficult form of computer science possible, other than like writing compilers, which yes, you're writing programming languages with compilers is wild. But otherwise, game development is actually as complicated as like missile launching systems, because it's just it seems silly, but it's just graphics programming, which is just calculus and linear algebra, just hardcore math, linear surfaces, oh my god, and a video game is this incredible piece of software that it has to run at 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second ideally. And that's crazy, and people don't really consider how hard that is. Because compare that to something like Microsoft Word or Teams or Discord. Like, what they're doing, of course, you know, it's not like you can just make that in your sleep, but it doesn't have to run 60 FPS.
It's hit a button, an H appears on the screen.
Yeah, like Microsoft Word is not really doing that much. The most complicated thing Word is doing is autocorrect, which is something you literally learn in the first semester of like DigiPen. If you get a good CS degree, you know, a spell check is like a beginner thing, and that's the hardest part of Word. Word is a very simple program ultimately, whereas even a dumb video game is trying to render multiple images, multiple sprites with varying translations and positions and rotations, all this scale constantly. And then the other aspect that no one thinks of is audio. So out of game programming, most difficult field of computer science there is, basically. Now we have AI, but AI is actually a lot easier than people think. But that's audio programming is the hardest subset of game dev because, graphics, you know, you have to do all your visual calculations, all of your game logic, all your system AI for enemies or whatever, your physics even. You have to calculate all that like 1 in a 60th of a second. So it's just so quick, so constant. But then audio, as you know, as an audio guy, we have to run that at 24,000 frames per second. And so when you're doing audio programming, it's so hard. It's just very low level and performance based, because if you miss a single one of those 24,000 frames of audio, there's a very audible pop, and that's not acceptable in any professional software launch. Whereas even with a really good 60 FPS game, if you miss a frame every once in a while, no one will notice. Like, it's much more generous than audio. And so that's what I studied audio programming at DIT. Pivoted there from graphics and physics because I had kind of already taught myself that when I was in high school. Again, I was very smart as a kid. Went to nerd school to make video games over like Harvard and Yale, actually, which, you know, kind of regret in retrospect, but you know, live and learn.
How long were you there?
I have an interesting path. I was at DigiPen for just under 2 years, and then I dropped out. I feel bad about this because it feels like bragging, but I was the first student in the school's history to get waived into master's level class after my freshman year, actually, which I'm pretty proud of. And again, I just kind of, it'd been my dream school since I was 9, and I knew the curriculum already. Like, I actually have multiple of their marketing packages that they send to like prospective students. I have like 4 of them from across the years, so I could see how when they added new programs and how their marketing kind of how it evolved, which is very interesting. And so I knew the curriculum, and so I also knew DigiPen is a very hard school. Like they're very proud of their dropout rate, which I'm not super. I get it, but also it's kind of crappy.
But it's I know that there's like a certain schools are beholden to like a graduation rate in order to justify certain programs existing. So it's like. It does sound like pretentious and whatever, but it's also like on the other side of that spectrum is like graduate everybody so we can say we have the numbers of you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like if that makes everyone's degree mean less.
Absolutely, and I don't think degrees mean very much, frankly.
Well,
I'm very
You're talking to a guy who has 2 jazz degrees. So.
As someone you work
inclined to agree.
Do you still work at UNLV now?
I do.
Yeah. So I just stopped working at UNLV a year ago. As someone who worked for UNLV the last 2 or 3 years. I hate UNLV and I hate public education with vehemence. But we'll skip that.
We'll skip that part. I don't. Now, to clarify for our listeners, and especially if there's some of my students, I don't regret going to get 2 jazz degrees. I if not just for the piece of paper, it's like I am. You're going through trial that you're able to come out and say I did that, and I think there's always merit to that no matter what you do after that. I don't like, and then I was also a GA, so I saw some I peeked behind the curtain of all the politics that happens at school, and it's not for me. You know what I mean? But that's we'll move on from that. So
I would love to talk about that for 3 hours, but you will not let me. I know. Yeah. That's,
so then DigiPen, Harvard. You said Yale too?
No, it's just because I was a smart kid. I had 99th percentile SATs, and I took all IP classes when I was in high school. So I got all a bunch of offers and stuff. But I was very poor. I grew up in poverty, without internet for most of my life. So I'm still kind of weird with social media and that kind of stuff.
It's just sort of like I want to catch up with what I missed kind of thing.
Yes, there was that. So we're bouncing all over the place. But when I was a teenager and I didn't have a good enough phone or the internet to run Facebook or Twitter or whatever for a long time, or Snapchat back when that was a thing, I was very snobby and uppity about it. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's beneath me. Social media is so bad for you. It's like, oh no, I don't use social media because I'm better than it. Was my personality.
What year was
as a
this?
teenager.
Is this
that was probably when I was 15, 14. So and then I got a phone that could run Twitter, and I immediately reneged on all of that, and I became a social media butterfly. Immediately, I had, and so it was bad.
I was asking not because I was trying to figure out how old you are, but it's more because when I was in college the first time when Facebook came out, and it was just I was talking about that with a friend of mine. It was just you talk about how drunk you were the night before on your Facebook wall, which that's the dark ages of this is just this new thing. It's like MySpace, but it's better, and you can talk to your, and then it became all what it is now. But what I mean is you weren't necessarily wrong to think
oh yeah, no, I 100% no, I believe I was more correct than I knew. I don't think social media is good for humans at all. It's very bad.
Yeah, we were coming back around to that.
But I'm very fallible in myself, and so as soon as I had access to it, I became a social media being. I became a social media addict like anyone else, if not more so.
Right.
And I was lived my whole life on that. I was obsessed with 800 Twitter followers, even though I did nothing. At that time, I produced literally nothing.
It's a button in the back of your brain that's being smashed.
Oh yeah, no. They're designed to be addictive and manipulative because that's how they make money. It's they're all for-profit corporations, and they're they're trying to absorb your money. But that being said, I'm fallible, extremely so, and so I did that thing. Fell off. I wisened up and got off all that social media after a few years, but still made some dumb mistakes there.
So after Harvard and Yale, where was it? How did what happened?
No. So my point was that I went to video game school over any Ivy Leagues.
Right.
Big part, that was partially because I wanted to make video games because I was very sure of my path. Also because I was very poor, and so I knew I'd go I am in a lot of debt because DigiPen is an expensive private school. I'm in like $120,000 of debt as a result.
I'll bleep out the amount.
So they don't come for you. I don't care. No, I don't care. It's fine.
I've got them here. Whoever wants them, I'll take 10% of that debt collection. I'll hold them in my bathroom until you get here.
Oh, it's fine. I'm paying it off now. Because I make good enough money. I actually just sold a patent for $42,000. Which I'm pretty happy about. But yeah. So I went to nerd school as a result.
Can I interject and just ask what was there, because you are who you are and you have this brain that you do, or you must have had people coming up to you like, do you want to join the military, son? Or like, were they trying to make you go and do like this or that? Like, was there pressure from outside sources for you to go into something other than game development?
Not so much as you might think. Like, definitely not military pressure. Even though I have always kind of wanted to join the military, and that was a backup plan to join the Air Force.
Well, since programming rockets is so easy.
Oh no! So that's the thing is, that like at DigiPen, it's a video game school.
Yeah.
Everyone goes there to make video games or like Pixar animation.
Yeah.
And most of them do. Some of them go to the NSA or to the CIA or to the military, and they do missile guidance.
I was going to say, because it's all part of the same thing. It's all the
same
skills.
No. Well, actually, DigiPen is primarily a farm for Microsoft.
Okay.
So it's a very weird school. It's nothing like UNLV. It's only like 1,000 people total, including staff. It's very tiny. And the campus is just an old Microsoft building that they bought and barely retrofitted. So when you go to one of the classes, it's as if you're just working at Microsoft, basically.
Okay.
So that's why it's very effective at producing Microsoft workers.
And
that's why DigiPen is like number 7th in the country for average graduate salary. With a CS degree.
Yeah.
Because it just makes a lot of people that go to work for Microsoft, Nintendo, and Boeing. That's the 3 main hires.
Okay.
But then decent amount go to the military as well. It's dumb. But I wisened up. I left school because I wasn't learning a lot, mainly because I'd overprepared. Because I knew it was hard, so I taught myself a bunch of the curriculum beforehand, and that as a result, I knew the curriculum beforehand.
Right,
so I did well. And then dropped out just to work. So I worked at a couple startups in Washington. One was an aerospace thing, both with Microsoft people. So Microsoft has a very generous moonlighting program.
Okay.
So everyone who works at Microsoft, particularly the higher-ups, they all also have a side hustle. They all also have a startup side business that they're trying to do. So I worked for the side businesses.
Okay.
One was an alternative to a space elevator called the Atlantis Project.
You sent me
that.
I
love. I hope it happens. It never will. I guarantee it will never happen because it would require the entire planet working together.
Yeah,
pretty much. But
and we'll get into that. But
it's no.
Are we going to burn up before then? Or?
Anyway. The other one was a video game startup called House of How, which I barely participated in. I joined that pretty late. If you look them up, they released a game called Spartaga on Steam, which is like a 3D Galaga, very quick, cheap VR project that made a good profit as a result. VR is an interesting space because the market cap is so small. It's not really, it doesn't make sense for a big studio to make a VR game because so few people have VR systems. So, there's not that many people we can sell to. But as a result, there's not that many VR games, so everyone who has a VR system tends to buy all of the games that come out because there's not that many options. So it's very interesting. So it doesn't make sense for really big companies, but if you're kind of smaller, might make a lot of sense to make a VR project right now still because there hasn't been much headway. Oculus has done a little bit more for the space in the last 5 years, but it's still pretty small.
Byron Beasley, if you're listening, there you go. He's a friend of mine who's making a VR piano thing. It's like with like haptic feedback and stuff. Anyway.
So they made a profit off that, and then they actually transmogrified into a second-party Minecraft developer, which is what they do now, and they make. They're very successful as a result. I'm very happy for them. They've blown up. Like when I was there, it was 4 people. Yeah. Now I think they're like 40. So they're.
What's the name of it again?
House of How.
House of How.
But I barely did anything for the company, frankly, because I left almost as quickly as I came.
Right.
Due to family circumstances that moved me here to Las Vegas. So that was my kind of winding path. We jumped all over the place.
No, it's great.
Yeah, I did a lot of video game stuff as a teenager because I wanted to go to that school, to DIT. Left for a lot of reasons, mainly financial, not learning. Just wanted to work. I wish I had just started working when I was 17, 18. I think that would have been a much better path for me. But, it's fine.
Well, there's not a whole lot of people in the world that would go, like, you don't need Yale or Harvard. What are you doing?
I would.
So
I'm telling my kids that. Oh, my God. No,
and I get it, because it's like, yeah, if you're doing the research, if the information is out there and available anyway, and you have the drive to go and, like, research all this stuff and do all this stuff, like, then, yeah, you kind of don't. Like, in talking about post-secondary education, I think there's a lot of value to it because it sort of forces you to go and do this within a certain amount of time. But I think more valuable thing is just learning how to do that yourself, like giving yourself something to do and making a plan on, like, I'm gonna finish this in February. Stuff like that. And I found a lot of success in just the decompression periods after and before formal education that I've done, because, like, it's the prep for it and it's the okay, now I can actually go and, like, explore what I learned in that class 2 semesters ago.
So without going into it for 3 hours, as much as I would like to, short summary of my feelings on education system. That I don't think college is inherently bad.
Yeah.
I just think mostly 18-year-olds should not be going to college. So what you have to recognize is that all real universities, including public schools, if not more so public schools, are for-profit corporations.
Yeah.
And so their goal is not necessarily to help you or to make you graduate fast or cheaply. Their goal is to extract as much wealth from you as possible, which means keeping you in the college system as long as possible, which is why the average bachelor's degree now takes, 5.5 years to get? That's not how it should be. And we also have a bunch of useless degrees that don't actually help you get a job at all.
I got 2 of them right
there. It's fine if you want to do it for a passion.
Yeah.
I just mainly recommend people don't go to college until they're, like, in their mid-20s and they know for sure what they want to do and why they're going. Because this idea, I'm going to go to college when I'm 17 and then I'm going to drink and party, and then maybe I'll figure out something I'm good at, and maybe I'll get a degree.
It's backwards.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
It's a weird little slice of Americana pop culture of, like, American Pie-ism, where you just have this, it's what you do. It's what you...
Yeah, well, the reason for
it's
it,
what these spoiled white boys have done for years, so let's all go do that.
Well, okay. Well, the reason that this happened is because of World War II, of course. Everything is because of World War II.
Well.
That after World War II... everyone came back from the war, and they were now adults, even the ones that were drafted at 18. Like, they went through a very harrowing experience for several years. Everyone's ready. They want to get back to work. We saved the world. We're energized.
Yeah.
And so they had very specific goals. Like, I want to open a bakery. I want to be a cobbler. I want to do a factory. They want to start businesses and do specific things. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. And they were in their 20s and very motivated.
Yeah.
So as a result, they went to college. A big group of people that produced the baby boomers, and they graduated college and became a very successful generation that built so much infrastructure and all these great things for the country and the world. This is a global thing, but particularly in America, I'm speaking of. And as a result, what the colleges did is they say, hey, look at this generation. This generation went to college, therefore they're successful. That means you should all go to college.
Yeah, it's the formula. We figured it out.
But correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
So what actually happened is a bunch of people who were very motivated with specific goals went to college, and they're successful. It was the combination of those two things. Just going to college without any motivation or specific goals, it's probably not going to work out too well from you. You're most likely just going to end up with a lot of debt and maybe get a degree, maybe not. And you're basically just going to start over at 22.
Yeah.
The same as if you just start looking for jobs at 18. So that's my spiel.
Man.
That's
I cannot think of anything. Look, and it's not like I'm not beholden to, like, if it comes to the point where my superiors at UNLV sit me down and go, you should really watch who you're having on your podcast, then I don't think they're really university at that point, because my whole view of it is that, like, if you can't ask questions, you have to criticize, you have to speak truth to power, all that crap, whatever. But Anyway, I totally agree with you on that.
To bring it back.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get through my timeline, and if we keep going astray, it's all good. So I left Seattle, came to Las Vegas for family reasons, and then again, I'm an adaptable person. When I was in LA doing film, in Seattle, video games. Now I do casino gambling game stuff. I still do a lot in the video game space, mainly through game jams and my lectures and that kind of thing, which I really enjoy. I ran the IGDA Las Vegas for a while, but my career now, currently, I actually don't say that, but I
it's okay.
Working,
point.
Yeah, working in the
sentence.
casino game industry. I had a company called Galaxy Gaming after working for the UNLV Center for Gaming Innovation, part of the International Gaming Institute, in partnership with the Department of Economic Development. There's so many acronyms at UNLV. It drives me crazy.
There's another business card thing for you.
But yeah, I helped run that program, the Game 480 Gaming Innovation class at UNLV, which was hugely beneficial for me. That's what got me into casinos and helped me learn a lot. And I got my first patent through that, so I'm technically an inventor, which can go on my grave. I'm very happy about that. And literally a week ago, I sold it, which I'm very pleased by. I just had to pay $3,500 to my lawyer as a result, which, that sucks. But it's... Lawyers always win is the lesson. But yeah. So currently in casino space and gonna stay there for the foreseeable future.
Congratulations on all that. Like that really is awesome. Like you deserve all of this. You work so hard. You're just.
I am a workaholic. Yes.
You are. There's something about like I don't know why. I know that. I mean, it's just the way I was raised. It's like you work really hard your whole life, and that's just it. Like, and I just respect the hell out of that. But I think it's because I'm fueled by latent, Irish Catholic guilt. Aren't we all? But no, it's just like I think a certain amount of that. It's like I like my coffee a little bit bitter. It's like a little bit of that is good for you, I think, because you could turn that into motivation. After hearing about all that, your journey and everything, it makes a lot of sense that you are sort of like. Would you consider yourself a generalist?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I've game development.
Always been a generalist. That mainly comes from making games when I was a kid in high school.
Well, and
that. I just made a whole. I made dozens of games when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
From start to finish by myself, doing everything.
Yeah.
That's where I really was able to start. My skill set.
Yeah.
So yeah, I generally kind of do everything by myself. Yeah, so we're moving towards the T shape. Yes.
Yeah, well, sort. I was just gonna touch on the fact that, like you. I think of generalist, and I think of jack of all trades, master of none. But you went and you're doing film, you're doing art, you go really far into everything you do. So it's like you're not just kind of like learning a little bit. Like I'm not going to go learn pixel animation or stuff that does have to do with game development. I know you should learn as much as you can about everything, which will bring us to that T-model thing. But like I think of it as like I'm not the type of person that's going to go do that because I don't feel like I have enough time. I don't have your brain, right? But like you're doing. You get really deep into everything you're doing, which is just I respect the hell out of that.
I don't. I'll agree to that. I will say I'm not skilled at very many things. Like I'm definitely not skilled with art.
Okay.
Or most things, but I have enough knowledge of art and like color theory and that kind of stuff, so that I can at least give critique and know what is reasonable or not reasonable to ask of an artist.
You're good for an executive position, is what you're saying.
It's just so teamwork, coordination is the most important skill in game development. Most important skill in most things and in life. Even so, I say that being mostly a solo developer for almost my entire career.
Sure.
But it's still, even still, if I have to work with one other person, that's 50% of the team.
Well, and it is really hard to communicate, even if you do both have the same like idea of what something is. There's always going to be little like snag points where it's like I learned this slightly different than you did, and it's like this weird it can just be really hard to communicate with someone, especially if you are working with them professionally. You don't really know them like personally, or even if you do know them personally, it's just
and that's the thing. That's part of my personality is that I like to be very personal with everybody. I wear all my emotions on my sleeve. It's a lie to say I never lie, but like I basically never lie. I only lie about like dumb stuff to my family because I want to avoid an awkward conversation. That's the only time I ever lie, and it's yes, I'm just a very honest and open person. I'm an oversharer for sure. But that. Yeah, I think communication is super important for any relationship, personal or professional. And, at my work, I'm a game designer at Galaxy Gaming currently. I go to lunch with every single person in the office. So I know everyone's at least basic personality, everyone's kids, everyone's like when they come in and leave. Not best friends with everybody. Best friends with maybe 5% of the company, but have a going relationship with everyone. I really care about that. That's something that I definitely had to learn because my whole life as a kid growing up, I thought I was a very shy introvert. And, you can say I was, and maybe my personality type changed, or maybe I was just sheltered and isolated and didn't interact with people. But now I know I'm a huge extrovert. I love talking to people. I love giving, public speaking to crowds and all that kind of thing. I'll talk to anybody on the street. If I'm in the mall, I'll talk to you at the side bench. Like, I don't care.
See, that's where we differ. But yes. Like, I definitely enjoy talking to people, but I only, like, in my head, I'm like, I don't want to just talk to anybody. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the thing that it comes down to kind of my core personal philosophy. So, we're talking about game development, but everything in game development, it's like anything else in life. It's any other skill. So, the advice I could give about game development really applies out everywhere, and one of my most core fundamental belief values is that everyone is the hero and the victim of their own story. That I think I don't believe in evil, that everyone is the product of their nature and their nurture. I'm a little bit of a determinist in this sense, but I think determinism's kind of stupid at the same time. I'm weird about it, but it's that I just really pride myself in being able to find common ground and be friends with literally anybody. Because we're all human. We all share infinitely more in common than we differ. And especially when that comes to like divisive things like politics, like even the most seemingly politically divided people share more in common than you could possibly imagine.
I've realized that, especially in the last couple of years. But,
and the reason for that, our reason for our assumption of these stereotypes is because that's just how the human brain works. Like I'm huge on evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology is pretty much my favorite subject. Everything is about sex and everything's about death. That's the driver for all human behavior. And even sex is about death. Like everything's about death ultimately. A thing is not beautiful because it lasts. It's a natural part of life. But our brain at a chemical level, on our neurons, they work on this by forming heuristics, which are basically stereotypes that we conceive the world as a baby by taking in stimuli and then categorizing it into sets of sets that you see. Okay, this shape, chunking. That's a squirrel. It's chunking and forming stereotypes. So like you start to gather what the concept of a squirrel is as you mature from a baby. And so you're like, oh yeah, squirrels, they're these really tiny, furry, brown, fuzzy things that climb on trees and collect nuts or something. And then you see a gray squirrel, and that shatters your previous stereotypes. And it's now I have to adjust my heuristics of what this pattern is. And so that's just how the brain works, and we're tribal hunter-gatherer animals at our base form. So everything about our sociology ultimately comes down to tribalism, which is why we have these divisive things. But in truth, we're not perfect beings. The world is not so easily categorized into stereotypes. The world is very flowy and fuzzy, timey-wimey kind of thing. It's very awkward. It's these wuzzy lines. It's getting wuzzier all the time. I make a lot of references. Like I speak pretty much in only references that only I get. Like no one's gonna get. Well, no, that's the thing. I said wuzzy lines, only getting wuzzier all the time. But anyone could tell me what that's from. I will kiss you. Like I don't.
I don't know the reference.
No one knows my references.
If anyone knows the reference, post on Instagram, hashtag was I forgot it already. Wuzzy.
So wuzzy lines getting wuzzier all the time.
So in saying that you're an extrovert and like the idea of having all of these, being able to communicate with people, you taught me about the T model of working as a team, which is not even just as it pertains to game development, but it could be applied to any like company.
Yeah,
really,
yeah. T model is just a way to describe an individual, and it's just a useful kind of it's just a useful way to model yourself, to make yourself as hireable as possible, as useful to a team as possible.
Yes.
So not something I invented. This is a very common,
for sure.
common idea in the popular culture of game development. I actually first learned about this when I was a teenager from the leaked Valve handbook, because I was obsessed with Valve as a kid, as a Portal 2 modder and everything. So they do this cute illustration of the Team Fortress 2 Heavy in the T pose, and then describing, okay, this is the ideal Valve employee. You have this wide breadth, the top part of the T, this horizontal breadth of skills. You know a little bit about almost everything. You can at least understand what is being said. You can at least give critique. You can at least be useful in the room. Yeah. But then you have that primary shaft, the vertical part, of this deep knowledge. You have this breadth and depth. So for me, I'm a game designer. That's my role. I consider my depth to really be on the psychology and creating, psychology. That's just creating fun, engaging experiences for players. Designing the rules and mechanics of a game is what a game designer does. And then I also have a very deep depth with computer science.
Yeah.
Not the biggest in the world. I'm not. I am a software engineer, but I'm not like a compiler creator. I've made like one crappy compiler once as a test project. I have some knowledge, but I'm not.
That's your primary
I'm
skill.
Not one of the people that.
Well, we're not here to quantify.
Pushing the. Well, no, I can quantify anything. But I'm not the one pushing the boundaries of graphics programming at EA kind of thing. But I can code a game from scratch pretty well. And then I have my wide breadth with audio stuff. I'm a huge audiophile. I listen to like 4 hours of music every day.
Yeah, I was kind of like, you sent me. At a certain point, whenever we get into like texting each other, it's like I'm like, I have to like compile this for later in a document, because like there's so much stuff that you send me that I'm like, I do want to.
I know,
yeah,
I'm super bad. I'm super bad at texting. I'm super bad at social media stuff, because I didn't grow up with it, so like my brain works stupid. I'm very all or nothing person. That's the other kind of core pillar of my personality.
That's fantastic.
I don't know. It's
but like, look, if I was just a random person that you just met and then like you're texting me as much as that, I would be like, who's this guy? But it wasn't.
No, it's
it
just
like,
when my focus on something, I give 100%, 140%, whatever.
I love that.
When I'm not, I try really hard, or I don't try at all.
Yeah.
I think it would be good if I had more middle ground, but I just have my weird quirks are all about that I'm just a very binary person, or I like things to be binary.
Yeah.
Even though I'm also the first person to say that, the world's, it's gray, it's the shades of gray, it's like everything's gray morality, everything is these complex shades on a spectrum.
Yeah.
But I really hate doors that are just like halfway open.
Sure.
I want them all the way swung open or shut closed.
Yeah.
Bothers me otherwise.
Yeah.
When I'm wet from the rain in Washington, because Washington rains all the time, I don't like being partially wet. I want to be soaking wet or completely dry. It just annoys me.
So if it drizzles, you go into the bathroom and just like pour water on yourself.
Yeah, I would rather just jump into a pool. That was the thing. It's like, oh God, when I was in Europe as a kid, like I would just jump into the English Channel fully clothed in jeans, because I'd rather be soaking wet.
My underwear's still dry. This is That's funny.
So when I speak, I'm the same way, that if I'm talking to you, I'm just never gonna shut up. Otherwise, I kind of forget.
You find look, and this is again, like I think I wrote something in the notes that's something along the lines of like, set up barbed wire for the Tangent Twins, being you and me. This is good for me because I've found in just listening to my own voice on this podcast, you go off on this and that, and then a lot of times, like if I listen to it a week later, I'll forget what I had said, and I'll go back and listen to it as someone listening, like remove yourself, be part of the audience, and I'm I'm like, I don't know where I was going with that. I can edit and go, oh, okay, I'll stitch this to here and it'll make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting to the point now where I don't have to edit episode unless it's requested, where I don't have to edit. So it's like this is good for me to have to like wrangle somebody who does the same thing that I do. But you go down a tangent because you're like, I have something to say about this, and so you're like, I'm gonna open this door entirely and go right down this. At the detriment of possibly losing your train of thought of the original thing. That's all.
So that's one of my favorite things is to unwind my train of thought. Where like I go on 4 tangents and then I'm like, okay, we were started talking at this point. How the hell was I talking about like 1940s Gerber baby food or something? And then I have to walk it back, and that's my favorite thing to do in the world. So I like unstacking.
Yeah, well, you should write mystery novels or something.
I love writing. Yeah, no, I try to be a
So okay, so the T model thing, and that was really cool. So leading from there, because well, okay, we'll signpost that because I want to talk about. I went from I graduated with a master's degree in composition. I'm going into doing more teaching and stuff. And I was trying to figure out what can I do with my formal education, right? I start researching, and I learn about. I was like, okay, well, I know some audio things. I know what does this composer do? What does that? What do you? It's like anybody would do the same kind of research. It's like look at somebody doing something that you like and figure out how they got there. And I found out, love video games, love composing music, go from there to learn about a little bit more like audio stuff. You can do doing sound design and Foley for like film and stuff, blah, blah, blah. I end up finding IGDA Vegas, which you were
So I was co-founder of the IGDA
okay.
Las Vegas. I was vice president. That was our local Las Vegas chapter of the International Game Developers Association.
Thank you for saying
big
it.
global group that has big communities in kind of game dev hubs like Seattle and LA and San Francisco and those kind of places, but all over the world. Chapters can range from as much as like 5 people to 500.
Well, and people can just go and like you can if you are in a city where it doesn't exist, is that what you did? Like
you just create it. Yeah, you just found it.
So if you're listening, anyone looking at game development, you live in I'm trying to. If you live in Kentville, Nova Scotia, and there's no IGDA, you can start it. Go find their website and contact them and figure out we're all part of one conversation here. Everyone's the same. There's all little pockets of the same types of people everywhere, spread out all over the world. You'll most likely find people that want to do the same kind of thing. But so you started.
Now we'll add Kentville, Nova Scotia to my bucket list.
Okay, there you go. That's where I grew up. So,
okay. So I did a fair amount of kind of event planning when I was still in Washington. Even in school, I ran clubs. I made a game design club when I was a teenager, and I taught people how to make games. Loved doing that kind of stuff. At college, I did a little bit of club kind of work, and then Las Vegas is huge community of gaming, but not really video game developers.
Right.
So I kind of had to invent it from scratch.
Meaning gaming, like casino gaming.
Yes, casino gaming, huge industry, huge community here.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily the type of people that will want to go to like meetups and kind of thing. They're more a little bit more.
They're more like
buttoned up,
counting their money parties.
Yeah, it's mainly just people that just go to work and then go home to their kids, and they're not really the young.
No offense to anybody
crowd.
who does.
There's a bunch of my best friends at the Galaxy. But like I'm younger people. Generally, there are some older people, but generally younger people that like want to be involved in something because of our monkey brains. Like we just want to be a part of a tribe. Sure. And so I wasn't really a video game dev community in Las Vegas, so I created that with the IGDA. We'd host little events right across the street from where I work now at the Innovation Switch Center, and once a month get some pizza and then have some speaker. I gave a talk there once, let some random schmucks like me give talks, but then get some people from like Discord and Valve and Epic Games and PC Gamer, Kate Edwards from the IGDA, who's wonderful in Microsoft, have her give a talk, fly in, which is super cool. So we were actually, for a brief period, the largest tech meetup in Nevada, which I was pretty proud of. Mainly that means if you're the largest in Vegas, you're the largest in Nevada. So it's like a little bit easier for me. But that was cool because we'd get like 100 people at some of the events, which was really great. I really enjoyed doing that. Did that for a year or two, and then pivoted more towards my work with UNLV at the CGI, and then now I'm doing Galaxy stuff.
Yeah. So I around. It was probably in 2018, 2019, I was looking at... I had just learned what a game jam is. Actually, I hadn't even really done that yet. It was. I found IGDA, and I was like, oh, they have these workshops. You can just go for free, or talks, or whatever you would want to call them, about, and in my networking intuition, I'm going, okay, well, I should just... Like you said to me at one point, go and be the only composer in the room is a great spot to be in, right? Hey, that's a good idea. I should go listen to some talk about mobile gaming that I have will just go over my head, but I'll go and just meet some people and just kind of find out blah, blah, blah. And so I went and I started going to these. I went to like a couple, and then I brought a couple of my composer friends. I was like, you should check this out. And these are just some options of what we can do. And it was when I brought my friend Carlos. Was when I met you, and you were just kind of. And here's the thing: is like, thank you for being you the type of extrovert you are, because like it is really hard, especially when you have a friend there, to be like, it's the awkward thing at a party where you're looking around like this, whatever. But you come right up to me and just like, hey, what's going on? And I'd say we're composer, and you're like, oh wow, that's cool, because you're like a unicorn in this kind of world of just someone who's just a composer. And then so we all went out for drinks afterwards, and like you picked my brain about stuff, and I learned like way more from you than you learned from me. But so, and then you're like, you should start doing this weekly game jam thing, and then the rest is off we went. But the thing that I appreciated, especially about that weekly game jam, is what you were talking about, is just like finishing. The idea of finishing small projects, so that you have not so much that, oh, look at how many video game titles I have to my name, and then, like, I don't know how much are
I have a talk about that exact thing. That's one of my favorite YouTube talks. It's about making small games.
And I'll link everything in the show notes, as well as we'll verbally say it at the end of the episode of like where to find your stuff. But yeah, Gunnar, you have so many resources for people interested in this stuff. But it's not, it applies, the finishing thing applies to, I teach that to students now. It's like, you don't, like, if I give you an assignment that is transcribe this tenor player, and you get like the first 1.5 choruses. It's 2 choruses. You got 1.5. Why? Like, time management shit aside, it's like there's so much that you can get from not even just the satisfaction of finishing something, an assignment. Just the idea of like, it's done now. It's this sense of finality of moving on to the next thing, and the idea that you're leaving a trail of, maybe it's shitty work, but it's going to get better and better and better. Yep. And it's only going to get better from like parceling it up into a finished thing, and then setting it aside, and then looking at it as from an audience perspective. And that's how I think about things, just breaking up things into, like, whether I'm doing like a sound design reel or a, I don't know, like a track, just whatever, or a transcription or whatever. It's just like little chunks of work. Once it's done, it's out the door. You're able to get a little bit more momentum than if you're working on like maybe a larger project over a couple of months that you sink all this time into, and then it has these stakes to it that are like, if it's not good, then I've just wasted 4 months of my life or whatever,
Key rule for life: never compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. So just always be trying to improve your own self, your own work, because that's all you have control over. You have no control over how other people think of you, how other people respect you, or you fit into the landscape, or how much you sell. obviously, yeah, you can do things to, it's a little bit facetious because you can do things to improve, walking outside naked is going to affect how other people think of you, but that's you only control yourself. You don't control other people's reactions or emotions, is my point.
You're the one looking.
And so doing small things, small games in this case, but this really applies to any skill, anything in life.
Yeah.
Break it down to as minute of a baby step as possible, and then just try and finish. Because if you endlessly spin your wheels trying to produce your magnum opus, it's just never going to happen. Perfection is the enemy of good. Perfection is the enemy of good enough. And most importantly, perfection is the enemy of profit. That is the main thing. You got to cake through your life. And this is something that I've had to learn. That is not natural for me at all. I am a tremendous perfectionist by nature.
Yeah.
I've wasted so much time, so much of my life, my brain wants to say, but so much time on projects that go nowhere because so you mentioned writing earlier. I write novels that I never release because I don't like them enough, and I endlessly restart them, which is super bad. The proper way to write a novel, which I understand intellectually, but again, there's a difference between understanding something and actually doing it.
Yeah.
So, I'm much better at this with games than I am with writing, because mainly just from practice and skill, experience. So with writing, I understand the same logic that I just need to write a piece of creative fiction, start to finish. Don't worry about the quality. Don't edit it as I go. That's a terrible habit that I do. That's perfectionistic. And don't get bogged down on how other people are going to perceive it. Just produce. Don't think, create.
Yeah.
And the more you can do that, the more you're actually going to get things done, and the faster you will improve. Because trying to endlessly tinker on something, you're not going to learn as much and improve as much as if you would just produce something.
Yeah.
So one of my talks is making small games to amplify your design skills. One of my favorite ones. And that's all about just doing this habit that I created in the last few years of creating small, tiny games, mainly through game jams. Mm-hmm. So Game Jam, it is a hackathon for game development.
Yeah.
Hackathon, you're just creating a piece of software from start to finish in a very short time frame. So typical Game Jam is you're going to make a video game from start to finish, empty blank project in a game engine, which is the software used to make games. Start to finish within 48 hours.
Yeah.
But it can be any length of time. It could be a week, can be a month. There's all sorts of different game jams. My favorite game jam on itch.io, which is the main website that game jams are hosted. Most popularly.
It's kind of like, I consider it, as an outsider, like the YouTube
exactly.
of
That's
games.
how I describe
like you can,
it.
or like E-Bombs World back in the day. It's just like you go and like play video games in the browser. You can try a bunch of stuff.
I absolutely pitch it always as the YouTube for
itch.io.
games. And so one of my favorite jams for a year or two was the Try Jam. So that is a 3-hour game jam. So I make a game from start to finish in 3 hours.
Nuts to
incredibly aggressive, incredibly nutty. But it's doable. Just something you build a skill with. And so I did that because, again, I'm very fallible and I'm not perfect at this stuff. So I would try and do game jams that were a week long, like the weekly game jam, which I really like. I really like the weekly game jam. Good community. And that's where you make a video game in 6 or 7 days, start to finish. Super cool way to meet other people.
And
other
it's always going on, too.
Always going on. That's super
so
great.
Flexible with your schedule kind of thing.
Absolutely. And you don't have to take up the whole week. You can do it only a day or two, whatever's best.
Yeah. Jarring interruption, anyone? I'm just here to tell you to go to part 2. We had a long conversation, so I couldn't fit everything into one episode. See you there. Part 2. Go now. Let it autoplay.